Everyone, this is the final step, step 6 for our single subject research design for group 1. That's including myself, Sharmila, Sabrina, and Amanda. And I'm going to show you guys our data set so you can see what happened with our ABA design that we did. And just to refresh your memory, the groups that we were looking at all had dysarthric tendencies and were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. We're looking at the differences between having treatment, LSVT, and not having treatment. There are 10 subjects in total, and we split them up into two groups. 5 subjects went into either group. If you look at the graph, you can see our ABA design. There's baseline, intervention, and baseline 2. The blue line is our wait time group, and our wait time group had an entire month prior to intervention, kind of to prep themselves, and we did this to account for any outside forces, because by showing this wait period, it's showing that the waiting doesn't change due to maturation or anything else. So when the treatment is given and there's been a longer baseline, it shows what actually caused that change. So that was the purpose of having the wait time group. The immediate treatment group got the LSVT right off the bat, and you guys can see their progress. So both groups began at about 30 to 40 dB SPL. So just so you guys have an idea of what that is, 30 dB SPL sounds like a quiet bedroom at night, and 40 dB SPL sounds like a quiet library. So there you can see they maintained that range even right before intervention was implemented for both groups. Now, you can see after intervention was implemented, they're going more towards conversational speech level, which is at 60 dB SPL. And by the end, you can see that they are very close or at 60 dB SPL, regardless of the wait time. In the middle, you see like directly after intervention, they're at about 50 dB SPL, which is what the average home would sound like. So still not up to conversational speech, but as you guys can see at the very end, they reach it, and that was our goal. So our next data set is that of the speech intelligibility test. So just to remind you guys, this was collected using 10 sentences ranging from 5 to 15 words from the sentence pool of the sentence intelligibility test. Each client were to say these sentences, and there was a listener who had to write down exactly what they heard. The number of correct words perceived by the listener was compared to the total number of words uttered. So the score calculated indicated the percentage of intelligible words uttered by the subject. So as you can see, we have 5 subjects. This is the wait time group, and we separated it into 5 categories: 0 to 20% intelligibility, 20 to 40% intelligibility, 40 to 60% intelligibility, 60 to 80% intelligibility, and 80 to 100% intelligibility. So before intervention, in the wait time group, there were 3 subjects who fell under the 0 to 20% intelligibility range. 2 subjects fell under the 20 to 40% intelligibility range, and 1 subject fell under the 40 to 60% intelligibility range. After intervention, there were 0 subjects in the 0 to 20% intelligibility range. 1 subject was in 20 to 40% intelligibility, 3 subjects were in 40 to 60% intelligibility, and 1 subject was in 60 to 80% intelligibility. So as you can see by the table, it's clear that a progress was made in this group, the wait time group. Before intervention, we had 3 subjects in 0 to 20% intelligibility, which is very low, and after intervention, there was 0. Before intervention, they did not show anyone in the 60 to 80% intelligibility or above, and after intervention we had at least one. Now, moving on to the next group, the immediate LSVT group, which again had 5 subjects. Same levels, 5 levels. Before intervention, we had 2 subjects in the 0 to 20% intelligibility range and 3 subjects in the 20 to 40% intelligibility range. So they did not show any intelligibility above 40%. After intervention, however, there are 0 subjects in the 0 to 20% intelligibility range. There is 1 subject in the 20 to 40% intelligibility range, and there are 3 subjects in the 40 to 60% intelligibility range. 0 subjects were in the 60 to 80% intelligibility range, and there was actually 1 subject in the 80 to 100% intelligibility range, which is a huge progress. As you guys can see, 80 to 100% intelligibility is definitely where we want to be, and we had at least 1 subject there after LSVT treatment. And there were no subjects in the 0 to 20% intelligibility range, which is definitely progress. So now moving on to the last set of data that we have for this, we have the Voice Handicap Index. So just to remind you guys again about what this is, it's a patient-reported questionnaire. It's examining the effects of the client's voice on his or her life. And it's separated into 3 levels: a functional level, a physical level, and an emotional level. So this all has to deal with how they feel their life quality is in relation to their voice. So this is very client-centered, and it shows how well or relevant the intervention and the treatment has actually been. So before I get into what the scores say, I just want to make sure that you guys are familiar, or they make sense. The scores actually, the numbers actually make sense to you guys. So there are 3 groups. There's mild, moderate, and severe. So for functional levels, a mild score would be 10.07. A moderate score would be 12.41, and a severe score would be 18.3. For a physical level, a mild would be 15.54, moderate would be 18.63, and severe would be 22.78. For emotional, 8.08 would be considered mild, 13.33 would be considered moderate, 20.3 would be severe. And then in total, because that's how the Voice Handicap Index is actually scored, we put all of them together as one function. And for the total, a mild would be 33.69, moderate would be 44.37, and severe would be 61.39. I don't expect you guys, of course, to remember all these numbers, so as I'm going through it, I'll make sure that it makes sense to you all. It says Table 1A, which is this one. The scores above obtained prior to the start of intervention demonstrates the results of the Voice Handicap Index from those participants receiving immediate treatment of LSVT. So that is the group that we're looking at in this specific table, and this is pre-treatment. So subject 1 had a functional score of 15, a physical score of 18, which is moderate, and an emotional score of 17, which is moderate to severe. Subject 2, functional score of 17, moderate to severe, physical score of 20, moderate to severe, and emotional score of 16, moderate to severe. Subject 3 had a functional score of 14, which is moderate to severe, a physical score of 18, which is moderate, and an emotional score of 16, which is moderate to severe. Subject 4 had a functional score of 15, which I went over, a physical score of 21, which is very close to severe, more severe than moderate, but it's in between the two. Emotional score of 15, which is moderate to severe. The last subject, subject 5, had a functional score of 16, again moderate to severe, a physical score of 17, which is mild to moderate, and an emotional score of 11, which is also mild to moderate. So as you can see, that one is the least severe subject, subject 5. So now we look at the totals and the averages per level, functional, physical, and emotional for this one. So if you look at the total and the average, the 15.4 is the average for functional, which is moderate to severe. For the physical score, the average is 18.8, again, moderate to severe, and the emotional score average for these 5 subjects is 15, which is, again, moderate to severe. So just to save time, I'm going to take a look at these and go over the averages so you guys can see how they changed afterwards. So table 1B looks at the results of the voice handicap index from the participants who have been withheld treatment of LSVT for 1 month. So this is looking at the second group, again, still pre-treatment. So I'm just going to look over the averages because I'm running out of time. So the average for the functional score in this group was 16.2, which is moderate to severe. The physical score average was 18.8, which is moderate to severe, and the emotional score average was 17, which is again moderate to severe. Now we're going to look at what happened post-treatment. And as you can see, they changed pretty drastically. The average for the functional score in the first group, which is the group receiving immediate treatment of LSVT, it has an average of functional score of 12. That is mild to moderate. They maintained a physical score average of 14.8, which is not even mild. Mild is 15.54. And they had an emotional score average of 13, which is mild to moderate. So that shows a great difference. Now, for the second group, the group who had been withheld treatment of LSVT for 1 month, shows the following average scores. For functional, there's a 13.2, which is moderate to severe, a 14.6, which is not even mild, which mild is considered 15.54, and an emotional score of 14.2, which is moderate to severe. So hopefully you guys can see the differences with our graphs and our charts of the effectiveness of LSVT on Parkinson's disease patients with dysarthria. I do believe that it will help, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you.